Hey, boys and girls, I'm sitting in my recliner. It's a little chilly tonight. I'm all bundled up on my blanket, ready to teach a lesson. I couldn't do this in the classroom. Today it's day 4. We're going to be learning about character traits. Do you remember those? To study this skill, we're going to be using the books Amazing Grace by Mary Hoffman and Apples to Oregon by Deborah Hopkinson and Mary Carpenter. Please make sure you listen to both stories before you begin to study the skill. And each day I want you to listen to the stories again to think about that specific skill. It's going to be really important that you do this. All right, let's begin. So what are character traits? Character traits are the way a character acts. And characters, like people, have lots of traits. In fact, we have all of the traits, but it depends on the situation when certain traits come out. Like, I might be a brave person sometimes, and I might be scared sometimes. I might usually be a brave person, but maybe spiders really scare me. So it really depends on the situation. But when authors write characters, they usually give them a few really strong traits and maybe one or two really negative traits. And it's the negative trait that helps define the character's problem in the story. That negative trait usually gets them in trouble. And it's the thing that they'll have to work on to overcome over the course of the story. When you're finding traits, one of the things that you want to do is you want to look at what the character says, what the character thinks, and how the character acts to decide what trait that they really have. And you want to see that repeated over and over and over again in the story to help determine what are their strongest traits. All right, let's start looking at some traits. This sheet here is a list of some common character traits. Go ahead and grab this list if you've got it, or you can just look here. Now, down the left side of this list are some positive character traits. And down the left side are some negative character traits. Now, just because we call them positive, that's how they generally are. And just because they're negative, that's how they generally are. If you look down the list, like for example, quiet. Quiet can be a positive trait, and talkative can be a negative trait. Depends on the situation. But let's look at some positive character traits. Characters might be smart and wise, optimistic, helpful and caring, responsible and hardworking, respectful and kind, humble, social or an extrovert. They're outgoing, patient, generous, brave and bold, talkative, open-minded, or wishy-washy. And then some negative traits down the other side are ignorant, foolish or naive, pessimistic, mean or cruel, irresponsible or lazy, disrespectful and rude, arrogant or vain, a loner, recluse or introvert, impatient, which is the opposite of patient, greedy and stingy, timid, fearful, or shy. Maybe your character's quiet. Maybe they're opinionated or strong-willed. So look at think of the two characters in Amazing Grace and Apples to Oregon, and think about which of these traits on the list did the character show the strongest. Now think of the positive traits and the negative traits. All right, today when you fill out this sheet, you're going to circle the character traits. Now, remember, you can find this sheet online, or you can print it off, or you can just write it on a sheet of paper, whichever is easier for you. We're going to focus on the character traits of the two main characters, Grace and the character in Apples to Oregon. And I want you to focus on it this way. What are the traits that were common in both girls? And what were the traits that were found only in the main character in Amazing Grace? And what were the traits that were found only in the main character in Apples to Oregon? And then down below, you're going to answer the question like this: Amazing Grace and Apples to Oregon have similar character traits because they both. And what trait did they have in common? And then Amazing Grace and Apples to Oregon have different character traits because Grace has what? And what was her character trait? And Apples has what? What was her character trait? The main character in Apples to Oregon. All right, good luck. All right, great job studying character traits today. So, after you finish with this assignment, go grab your chapter book and read it for a while and really focus on the character traits that your character has. Think about how your characters might be in the book that you're reading might be the same as the characters in Amazing Grace and Apples to Oregon, and how they might be different. And think about that as you're reading the different books that you're going to read over this summer. Think about how the characters are similar and how they're different. Have fun.